If someone asked me which moment etched itself deepest into my youth, I wouldn't hesitate to say, the night of my 18th birthday, when my own parents kicked me out of the house I once called home. Sounds like an overly dramatic scene from a TV show, doesn't it? But for me, it was raw reality, a truth that tore my youth apart in the heart of bustling Chicago. My name is Claire Johnson, born into an upper-class family. On the surface, we were picture perfect, like a glossy magazine cover. My father, Robert, a high-flying logistics executive. My mother, Linda, a darling of elite women's clubs, always dazzling with her pearl necklace and polished smile. And my brother, Michael, the family's golden boy, an endless source of pride with his stellar grades, athletic scholarships, and unyielding charisma. And me? I was the wrinkle in their flawless portrait. I'd spend hours at my easel, lost in colors and shapes, rather than running on a sports field or mingling with rich kids. I read books instead of attending loud dinner parties. And that made me different. In my parents' dictionary, different meant useless. Throughout high school, the gap between me and my family grew. When Michael got a sports car for his 16th birthday, I got a cold remark from Dad. Life's not fair, Claire. Learn to deal with it. When I won first place in a citywide short story contest, Mom just shrugged, her red lipsticked mouth curling slightly. That's nice, but writing won't pay the electric bill. Every dinner in that lavish house felt like a trial, with me as the sole defendant. Michael would lounge, twirling his car keys with a smirk, while Dad looked at me like an unwanted burden. Mom, always primping her perfect hair in the mirror, added subtle jabs that turned every meal into a lump in my throat. I tried. God, I tried so hard to please them. I joined the sports club despite hating it, made small talk at parties where I didn't belong. But it only left me more lost. In their eyes, I was an outsider in my own family. I remember one winter evening, Chicago's sky heavy with snow. Dad sat across from me, tapping his fingers on the oak table, his eyes sharp as knives. If you're still living under this roof by your 18th birthday, Claire, you're a failure. His words hissed through his teeth like a verdict. I laughed, because what else could I do? But deep inside, I was shattering. Then the day came, my 18th birthday. Mom called me to the living room. The chandelier sparkled, candles glowed on a large cake, but not for celebration. Michael sprawled on the sofa, arms crossed, eyes gleaming like he was waiting for a show. Dad stood tall, holding a white envelope. "We think it's time you learn to take responsibility for your own life," he said, his voice cold as steel. I opened the envelope. Inside, nothing. No check, no note, just an empty symbol of their rejection. Mom tilted her head, her voice sweet as honey but sharp as a razor. "Don't worry, darling. One day you'll thank us for this lesson." The room spun. I forced myself to stay calm, packing a few clothes, my old sketchbook, and my phone. That was it. My entire 18 years fit into a worn backpack. As I walked out, Michael whistled softly, and Dad stood with arms crossed, not bothering to look back. The door slammed shut behind me. I stood on the icy porch, Chicago's night wind biting my skin. That was it. The perfect family had exiled me like a stranger. That night, I slept in my beat-up car, curled up in the back seat, staring at the cracked ceiling as if it were my dark future. I wanted to cry, but my tears had frozen long ago. My phone buzzed, a single message from the only family member left, my grandfather, Henry Johnson. "My door is always open for you." 8 simple words warmed my heart in that frigid night. I'm sharing this not for pity, but to show you where I started, a rejected daughter with nothing but herself and her grandfather's embrace. Maybe some of you have felt belittled, abandoned, or pushed out of the mold others set for you. If you've ever felt that, know this: you're not alone. And my journey, from the darkness of rejection to unexpected turns, might resonate with you. If you believe everyone deserves to be heard, leave a comment or follow my story. Maybe it'll touch a hidden corner of your heart. If you've ever wondered what it's like to wake up not knowing where you'll sleep tomorrow, you'd understand how those first days after leaving home changed me. I, Claire Johnson, had just turned 18, with nothing but loose change in my wallet, a worn backpack, and a clunker car that rattled when it started. The vast world lay open, but I felt trapped in a small, suffocating, cold box. That first night, I slept in the car. Chicago in November was so cold I wore 3 layers and still shivered. My breath fogged the windows. I curled up in a thin coat, tucking my head into my backpack for warmth. Sleep came in fits, interrupted by ambulance sirens and chaotic dreams of family. Dad's cold stare, Mom's mocking smile, Michael's whistle. The next morning, I woke exhausted but resolute. I had to survive. I couldn't let them be right, couldn't become the failure Dad predicted. I scoured the city for jobs. I waitressed at a small cafe, standing 8 hours on blistered feet. I took night shifts at a bookstore, where the smell of old paper eased my loneliness. Every penny was saved. Eventually, I rented a tiny room with peeling walls and a creaky window. To me, it was the first home I'd earned. The only person by my side was Grandpa Henry. He never pried or pitied. Instead, he invited me for Sunday dinners. At his simple table, he shared stories of starting with nothing. "Claire," he'd say, "people can take your money, status, even family, but they can't take your inner strength. You're tougher than you know." Once, he slipped an envelope with $50 and a scribbled note into my bag. "Buy some fruit, not just ramen." I laughed, then cried alone in my quiet apartment. In the years that followed, I worked and studied. Each small victory convinced me I could rise from nothing. I remember the first night I paid rent without fear of eviction, sitting on the floor eating instant noodles but feeling like I'd conquered the world. But that joy was fleeting. One fall afternoon, while working at the cafe, I got a call from the hospital. The doctor's voice was somber. "Ms. Johnson, your grandfather Henry passed away after battling heart disease. Our condolences." I froze, dropping a tray of drinks. I knew Grandpa was frail, but I believed he'd be there for years. Losing him felt like the sky collapsing. The funeral was on a gloomy day. I stood silently before his portrait, recalling his hand squeezes, advice, and warm smiles. Across the room, my parents and Michael were there, not grieving but whispering, calculating, as if Grandpa's death was a financial event. I looked at them, my heart a mix of rage and coldness. After the funeral, I lived like a machine, working, returning to an empty apartment with no one to call. I missed Sunday dinners, the way Grandpa tilted his head to listen, his hearty laugh. One afternoon, returning from a shift, I found a formal envelope in my mailbox, embossed with a court seal. My heart raced as I opened it. It was a summons to the reading of Henry Johnson's will. My name was listed alongside my parents and Michael. I held the trembling paper, a chill running down my spine. Questions swirled. What did Grandpa leave me? A letter? A small keepsake? Or just a final message? And why was I needed there with them? The people who'd coldly cast me out. I gripped the paper, staring out the window at Chicago's fiery sunset. The pain of losing my only anchor mixed with a vague premonition. A new door was opening, bringing a storm I couldn't imagine. I'm sharing this to show that sometimes life pushes us to the edge of loneliness, to prepare us for an unexpected turn. And my journey was just beginning. If my story grips you, comment why. If it's not quite there, don't hesitate to leave an N. If you've ever walked into a room where every eye sees you as an outsider, you'd understand how I felt that morning, the day of my grandfather's will reading. The Cook County Courthouse in Chicago was imposing, with high ceilings, dark wood walls, and a heavy ticking clock. I walked in, palms sweaty, trying to steady my racing heart. My parents were already there. Dad, Robert Johnson, in an expensive gray suit, sat rigid like he was at a board meeting. He glanced at me, his eyes cold, assessing me like a low-level employee. Mom, Linda, in a pearl-colored silk dress, her necklace gleaming, flashed a forced smile. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation, as if a fortune was about to land in their lap. And of course Michael, my brother, sat center row, legs crossed, in a tailored navy suit. He smirked when I entered, that familiar high school sneer, reminding me I was still the invisible shadow in the family. I sat in the back corner, out of their line of sight, watching silently. Questions churned. What would Grandpa leave me? A small keepsake? A final note? I didn't dare hope for more. A soft cough drew eyes to the front. Lawyer Whitmore, Grandpa's trusted confidant, stepped in, placing a thick stack of files on the table. He adjusted his silver-rimmed glasses, his voice resonant. "We are here to read the final legal will of Mr. Henry Johnson." Mom leaned toward me, her voice sugary but her nose high. "Don't worry, Claire. Whatever happens, the family will take care of you." I pursed my lips, staying silent. Dad nodded firmly, hand resting on his knee, eyes fixed on the files as if the fortune was already his. Michael leaned back, half closing his eyes like a king awaiting his throne. Whitmore opened the first page, his voice steady. "This is the legal will, signed and notarized 1 year before Mr. Henry Johnson's passing." I could barely breathe. The room went still, only the soft rustle of paper audible. Then his words hit like a hammer. "I, Henry Johnson, bequeath my entire estate, including all shares, real estate, and investments valued at approximately $5 billion to my granddaughter Claire Johnson. Full ownership, no guardianship, no conditions." Mom froze, her red lipped smile cracking, eyes wide and unblinking. Dad went rigid, jaw clenched, hands trembling on his knees. Michael shot upright, face flushed, stammering wordlessly. Me. I was stunned, my mind blank. $5 billion? I blinked, unsure I'd heard right. The room fell deathly silent. Then, like a snapped wire, they reacted. Mom clapped sharply, her voice shrill and covering. "Oh, of course! Claire was always close to Dad. We'll manage it together, right, Robert?" Dad nodded, forcing calm despite sweat beading on his forehead. "Yes, $5 billion is no joke. Claire's young, inexperienced. The family will handle the heavy lifting, ensure it runs smoothly." Michael scoffed, his tone mocking. "Remember that little credit card debt in your freshman year, Claire? You were in over your head. Now imagine $5 billion, a disaster waiting to happen." I sat motionless, their words stabbing my heart. They didn't see me as Grandpa's chosen heir, but a puppet to control. Each word dripped poison into my ears. Whitmore tapped his pen, his voice firm. "Let me clarify. Mr. Henry Johnson explicitly designated the estate to Claire Johnson with no oversight or sharing." Dad's lips tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. Mom leaned close, her red-painted nails grazing my arm, her whisper sweet but threatening. "Don't be foolish, Claire. You're not equipped for this. Let us handle it. It's what your father would have wanted." I turned to her, her eyes glinting with false tears, lips trembling. Across the room, Michael crossed his arms, chuckling derisively. Dad sat still, shoulders tense, like a predator robbed of prey. Two emotions clashed within me, panic and a quiet strength. I remembered Sunday dinners with Grandpa, his words, "You're stronger than you think." I knew he hadn't chosen wrong. I said nothing, just clenched my fists and took a deep breath. They could belittle, mock, try to take it from me, but this time I wouldn't back down. As I left the courtroom, I heard Mom's heels clicking behind me, her voice still falsely sweet. "We'll talk later, Claire. You need us." Dad gave a curt nod, masking his fury. Michael glared, lips pursed like he'd swallowed a stone. I strode out, breathing Chicago's cold air. The trembling fear was gone, replaced by a new fire. I'd prove Grandpa was right to trust me. If you want to hear more stories like mine and relate to my struggles, check out my previous videos on this channel. I was naive to think the will reading would settle things. That day was just the start of a silent war, where those who called me family became adversaries, every smile hiding a sharp blade. The day after the reading, I returned to my small apartment to find Michael leaning against the hallway wall, hands in his pockets, eyes glinting with contempt. He stepped forward, blocking my door, that half-smile all too familiar. "Well, isn't this interesting, Claire?" he drawled, You think you can handle $5 billion? Remember when you borrowed $50 from me for college books? Now what are you gonna do with an empire? I kept my voice steady. Grandpa left it to me, Michael. That was his choice. He smirked. Sure, but he didn't know how weak you are. Trust me, you'll embarrass the family soon enough. And when you do, don't be surprised if we step in to save the day. He walked off, leaving his expensive cologne and a bitter sting in my chest. Days later, Mom showed up. Linda, in a designer dress and leather gloves, filled my tiny apartment with the scent of Chanel. She sat as if still in the Johnsons' grand living room, her eyes gleaming with calculation. Claire, I know you're upset with us. But don't be stubborn. You're young, inexperienced. Let us handle it. I promise, it's for your benefit. I met her gaze. My benefit? Or everyone else's but mine? Her smile faltered, then returned, sugary sweet. Don't say that. We're family. I stayed silent. She left, her heels clicking, leaving an aching emptiness. The breaking point was Dad, Robert, no longer bothering with charm. He called one afternoon. Claire, I need you to sign some papers so I can manage the investments. Don't worry, just a formality. I have experience. You don't. If you're stubborn, the consequences will be severe. His tone was a command. My hand shook holding the phone, but I replied, No, Dad, I'm not signing anything. He paused, then hung up, leaving a heavy air of threat. I thought I was strong enough to face them, but the storm grew. Weeks later, Whitmore called, saying someone had forged documents to withdraw funds from my estate account. Luckily, the will's strict terms stopped it. I didn't need to ask who was behind it. My heart burned with anger and pain. They were willing to make me helpless to take what wasn't theirs. But that wasn't all. Soon, vicious rumors spread across Chicago. Claire stole the fortune from her brother. Henry was old, probably manipulated by that girl. That failure of a daughter can't handle money. At the grocery store, I caught scornful glances. At my regular cafe, staff grew distant. Old friends stopped texting or inviting me out. One night, alone in my dark apartment, I felt the world turn its back. I had $5 billion on paper, but in reality, I was a lonely outcast drowning in a mire of gossip. While cleaning an old drawer, I found a yellowed envelope labeled, Claire, open when you truly need it. Grandpa's familiar handwriting. My heart raced as I tore it open. Inside was a short letter, his writing slightly shaky but firm. Claire, if you're reading this, you're at a turning point. Never let them take your dignity. Wealth can vanish, fame can fade, but no one can steal your dignity. You're stronger than you think. Stand tall. Tears streamed down. I pressed the letter to my chest, as if Grandpa were beside me, holding my hand. That night, I stayed awake. I realized silence would let me be swept away. I needed a plan, trustworthy allies. The next morning, I called an old coworker for a referral to an honest financial advisor. That's how I met Robert Hale, a middle-aged man with graying hair and calm eyes. He didn't care about the dazzle of $5 billion, only asking, What do you want your life to look like in 10 years? That question silenced me. Then, for the first time in weeks, made me feel heard. Days later, I was introduced to Daniel Grant, a lawyer experienced in complex inheritances. Hearing my story, he nodded. They won't stop, but we have ways. I looked at these two men, a financial advisor and a lawyer, and knew I wasn't alone anymore. If there's a place that exposes people's true colors, it's a courtroom. That morning, I walked into the Chicago courthouse with a heavy heart. The heavy wooden doors closed behind me, trapping me in a world where truth would be laid bare, and no one could hide. Dad, Robert, sat sternly in the plaintiff's row, exuding cold confidence in a perfectly tailored black suit, as if asserting his old business clout. Mom, Linda, dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her face meticulously made up to feign sorrow. She rested a hand on Dad's arm, a display of family devotion. Michael, in a light suit, sat beside them, whispering to their lawyer with a smug half-smile. I, Claire Johnson, sat opposite, in a thick air of antagonism. Beside me was Daniel Grant, his calm eyes and steady voice the only things keeping me from feeling utterly alone. Their lawyer went first, his voice sharp. Your Honor, my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, have no intent to seize the estate. They're concerned for their daughter, who has no financial management experience and a history of serious credit debt. Entrusting her with $5 billion is like putting a child behind the wheel of a speeding truck. It's dangerous not only for her, but for the legacy Mr. Henry built. Each word cut into me. I bit my lip, fists clenched, remembering nights sleeping in my car, surviving on ramen. I wasn't the helpless child they painted. Dad nodded along, eyes triumphant. Mom sighed, faking tears. Michael glanced at me, his gaze dripping with mockery. See, you'll never be good enough. Then Daniel stood, unhurried, resting a hand on my shoulder to remind me I wasn't alone. He faced the judge, voice firm. Your Honor, this isn't about competence. It's about greed. He laid out evidence, bank records proving someone tried to forge documents to access my account, thwarted by the will's protections, messages from Michael mocking me, you'll drown in $5 billion, better let Dad handle it, and finally, Grandpa's worn leather notebook. Daniel read slowly. I know Claire isn't what Robert and Linda wanted, but that difference makes her stronger. She survived the harshest things. This estate isn't just money. It's my faith in the granddaughter I know won't let me down. The room fell silent. I bowed my head, tears streaming uncontrollably. The judge looked from the plaintiffs to me, her eyes sharp. She spoke decisively. The court finds the Johnson family's evidence unconvincing. There is clear proof of their attempts to misappropriate the estate. Per the legal will, the entire estate belongs to Claire Johnson, with no oversight or conditions. The lawsuit is dismissed. The court further warns Mr. and Mrs. Johnson and Michael Johnson for their misconduct. Case closed. The gavel struck 3 times, the sound tearing through the air, echoing in my heart. I looked at them. Dad's face paled, fists trembling. Mom sat stunned, her makeup smearing with real tears, not from remorse, but defeat. Michael stood, his chair falling back, lips quivering. No way. No way. I sat still, exhaling, as if a massive weight had lifted. The fallout came fast. Robert was forced into early retirement, his reputation tarnished. Linda, once a socialite queen, was shunned by her clubs, uninvited to galas. Michael, the former golden boy, became a laughingstock after his messages were exposed in court. The Johnson family, once a shining portrait, crumbled with one ruling. I left the courtroom, Chicago's cold wind whipping my hair, but I no longer trembled. For the first time I held my head high. I wasn't the rejected daughter or the invisible shadow. I was Claire Johnson, the one Grandpa trusted, and now the world had to acknowledge it. If anyone asked me the hardest moment of my life, it wouldn't be the day I was kicked out at 18, or the brutal courtroom battle against my parents and brother. The moment that haunts me most was a gloomy afternoon when my phone rang, and the hospital's voice came through. Ms. Claire Johnson? Your mother Linda has been admitted. Stroke. We need a family member to sign for surgery immediately. I stood frozen. Memories flooded. Mom's sneer on my 18th birthday, her heels clicking as she left my apartment with manipulative words, her mocking eyes in court. My heart ached with pain and anger. My first instinct was to walk away. She'd abandoned me. Why should I show up now? But in that silence, another voice echoed. Grandpa's. You're stronger than you think. Don't let hate bind you. I buried my face in my hands, tears falling. The decision came from deep within. I would go. Northwestern Memorial Hospital reeked of antiseptic. I rushed to the ER, signing a stack of papers the doctor handed me. They said insurance wouldn't cover the costs. I nodded and pulled out my estate credit card without hesitation. Through the glass, I saw Mom on the bed, her face pale, silver-streaked hair disheveled. The woman once proud at high society parties was now frail, fragile. Something in me broke. My anger melted, leaving a heavy pity. The surgery dragged on. I waited, heart heavy, recalling her harsh words. I imagined walking away, then realized, if I did, I'd become like her, choosing abandonment over love. I didn't want to be that twisted reflection. When the doctor said the surgery succeeded, I exhaled, as if escaping a chasm. In the recovery room, Mom lay still, machines blinking. I sat beside her, holding her cold hand. "I'm here, Mom," I whispered, unsure if she heard. One afternoon, faint sunlight filtering through the window, Mom opened her eyes. Her cloudy gaze settled on me. Her voice was hoarse, trembling. "Claire, why are you here? After everything?" I choked back tears. "Because I can't abandon you. I haven't forgotten what you did, but I won't repeat that mistake." Her tears fell. Her weak hand squeezed mine. Her voice broke. "I was wrong. Blinded by pride. I lost you. Forgive me." "Claire," I replied, throat tight. "I won't forget, Mom. But I don't hate you. This is how I honor Grandpa. With compassion, not vengeance." In that moment, her shoulders shook, no longer the haughty woman but a frail, regretful mother. And I, the once rejected daughter, found release for myself. From that ordeal, I realized the $5 billion meant nothing if I used it to fuel hatred. I began planning a new path, the Henry Johnson Foundation, to support struggling youth, those abandoned by family, with scholarships, housing, and a chance to start over. At the foundation's launch, I stood before hundreds, hands trembling but voice firm. My grandfather said true value isn't in bank account numbers, but in how we use them for good. I hope this foundation is a second embrace for those needing support. As applause rang, I looked skyward, imagining Grandpa's warm smile. Months later, Michael sought me out. No longer arrogant, no tailored suit, just a tired man with dark circles under his eyes. He said softly, "Claire, I want to join the foundation. I know I was wrong. Give me a chance to make it right." I studied him, seeing the teenager who once whistled mockingly, now humbled by his own mistakes and pride. I nodded slowly. "Okay, but you have to change. This foundation isn't for glory, it's for sincerity." He bowed his head, shoulders trembling, and I knew he understood. One evening, something I never thought possible happened. The Johnson family sat together at a table. Not in the lavish mansion, but in the small house I'd bought. A cozy kitchen, warm yellow light, the smell of baked goods. Dad was no longer the commanding executive. Mom wore a simple knit scarf. Michael quietly served food. For the first time, no one boasted or mocked. We just sat, sharing ordinary stories about a long day, the future, mistakes to mend. I looked around, seeing the fragility, but also the truth in that moment. I realized my greatest victory wasn't the 5 billion or the lawsuit win, but escaping the cycle of resentment to live freely. Looking back, the most valuable lesson wasn't the 5 billion or societal recognition, but learning about forgiveness and inner strength. I was once abandoned, living in loneliness and despair. Yet those pains forged me into someone who could stand through storms. I learned hatred only weighs us down, while forgiveness is the key to freedom. When I helped Mom in her darkest hour, I didn't just save her. I saved my soul from resentment's burden. The Henry Johnson Foundation wasn't to prove anything, but to spread the love Grandpa instilled in me. If this story touches your heart, leave a comment to let me know what you're thinking. Don't forget to follow the channel to join me on the next journey, where we learn to stand tall, forgive, and live fully.